Hello you guys, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If it's your first time here, you're watching BookedonCharity, and in today's video I'll be sharing with you my favorite books of 2024. Now, I was gonna do this video just based on the books that I gave 5-star ratings to, and when I had a look at my story graph, because that's where I was tracking my reading, it showed that I had 13 books out of 70 that I gave 5 stars, and I think I was very stingy in that number, but a good chunk of those 13 books were rereads. And I thought it wouldn't be enough to just talk mostly about my rereads, because obviously they are my favorites because I am rereading them, but I thought maybe let me also include my 4.75 and 4.5 star ratings, because for me those books were also very good, and there's probably like some small element missing in the story that did not allow me to give it a full 5 stars, and in some cases it is in my own doing as well, because I feel like there's things that I've missed that if I caught them when they were given to me, I probably would have felt like the story closed up very nicely and would have really given it 5 stars. But usually what happens is in my rereads, I end up giving those books 5 stars because now I have a lot more information to work with and I know what builds up to a plot twist, if you know what I mean. I've sectioned the books in that sense, so I will actually get started on the 4.5 star rated books that I read last year, which were books that in my opinion were really great, and I definitely do recommend them to you guys to try out if you haven't done so already. So yeah, let's get into my 4.5 star ratings. So this is not in any particular order, but I'm just gonna list the books as they appear on my story graph. So the first one I want to talk about is Januaries by Olivia Blake. So I do not have the physical copy with me. I did borrow my copy to Katleho because I loved it so much and it felt like a book that she might like as well. So this is an anthology by Olivia Blake, and it follows stories of love, betrayal, some mysteries in there, and revenge. And I'm not somebody who really enjoys anthologies, short story collections, because I mostly feel like a little bit like there's something else that was missing, if that makes sense. But in this one, I enjoyed, I want to say like 90% of those stories I enjoyed, and I felt like there were 5-star rated stories. And one of my favorites is the first story, actually, called The Bridge. And it's just the kind of topics that Olivia Blake goes into in all of these stories, it's just mind-blowing. So in the first story, it was mainly based on these two people meeting in a very unlikely situation and essentially falling in love, but it's very difficult for them to be together based on one of them's, let's call it, career. And you see how they work on finding each other every time, and the kind of bond and the message of the kind of things you would do for somebody you love, like it's very prominent in their setting. And then we have all these, like another example within that story where you find selfishness in love and relationships and how that is compared to this selfless kind of love. And I just loved it. And she covers stories of marriage. There was a little, I don't even know if I should call it a short story, because it started off with the question where one person was asking another one what their view on marriage is and whether they think that they would change when they get into a marriage. And I want to call it a letter because it's not a short story, but in this letter it's almost like an answer to describe what marriage is like, and I'm like, this is so spot on. So I just loved everything about it. There was one on like these two very obsessed, very dark romance filled with like some betrayals, but at the same time revenge. That was just I couldn't stop reading, I couldn't stop listening. I really enjoyed the audiobook as well. So if you don't have the physical copy, the audiobook is a great way to read it. I think I read it via Everend. I want to say that it's available in Everend, but I absolutely enjoyed Januaries. I think there's probably like 1 or 2 stories where I felt a little bit lost which is where my 0.5 star rating went. So, but other than that, it's a great one. Pick it up, read it. I think you would really enjoy it. Every story is very different, and it doesn't even feel like it's been written by one person. Like that's what I'm saying, the vastness of the kind of topics that she tackles in each of these stories, but surrounded them in either magic or some kind of like fantastical element or something set kind of like in the future. It's just so good. It's so good. I absolutely enjoyed it. The next one I want to share is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. So I recently finished this one, and obviously I gave it 4.5 star rating. So it's the first book in the Mistborn trilogy. I am on a journey to read my share of Brandon Sanderson, and I wanted to start with the Mistborn trilogy. So in this one, we are following mainly two perspectives, and we are set in the world where it is called the Final Empire, and you have one ruler for this Final Empire, and this one ruler is also seen as a god, especially by the people who are lower class, who are called the Scar, and they are essentially like the lowest people in society. And in other areas, they are literal slaves. They have no rights. They have no rights to work for wages. In some areas they are mistreated, they are killed, they are beaten, the women are raped and killed. Like it's a lot. Okay, it's a lot happening. So you've got this group of what is usually thieves working to essentially overrule the current Lord Ruler, but he's known to be immortal. So you go through this journey trying to figure out how exactly are they going to get this done. But it is so good. And the one thing that I really enjoyed was the magic system. It is something unlike anything I've seen before. So this magic system is based on metals, and there are 8 base metals, and in those 8 they're grouped in twos, where one metal will do a pulling and the other one will do a pushing. And the way that these people use these metals in battles and in all these scenes was just so cool to me. So I enjoyed it. This is somewhat of a slow burn, but I still enjoyed the journey. I enjoyed the political intrigue. You do get some scenes where there's fighting, but there's a lot of political maneuvering in this whole book, because the main point of it is to try and overrule this final empire, because the Scar are unhappy, they have been mistreated, and they think that somebody should do something about it. But I enjoyed my journey with the Final Empire. I did tab it a little bit as well, as you can see, or maybe a bunch. I tabbed it a bunch. I like how this looks. It looks so nice, and you just get little peeks of the tabbing. The next 4.5 star rated book I have is Iron Gold by Pierce Brown. And you might be thinking, Charity, you talk about Red Rising so much, how come you didn't give this one 5 stars? I didn't give it 5 stars because this one was a little bit slower, and I think it's probably because it is the first book in what I'm calling the second era of Red Rising, and therefore there's a lot of groundwork being put down here. There's a lot of new characters to get used to understand their backgrounds, but it was still so good. And the whole time you're reading this book, you have this underlying sense of things are about to blow up because of everything that's happening in here. But it's so good. Like, it's written so well. Pierce Brown is like brilliant at weaving political intrigue into action, into having you fall in love with the characters, rooting for them, crying for them when he kills them off, because he is not shy of doing that. But it was just, this whole series is a great ride, and I cannot stop like recommending it. If you don't know what Red Rising is about, we are following mainly a main character called Darrow from book 1 to book 3. From book 4, you do get multiple perspectives where we follow other characters as well, but we are following Darrow, who is from Mars, and more specifically underground Mars, and he is a miner, and he comes from a place where it's just miners, and they have been told all their lives, for generations, for hundreds of years, that they are the pioneers of Mars, and what they are doing, which is mining for this material called helium-6, is going to help humanity essentially survive outside of Earth, as well as terraform Mars so that it's livable for the people having to transition. But then Darrow goes and finds out that they've been lied to for centuries, because Mars has been terraformed for centuries and other colors have been living on the surface of Mars for years, and they've been ruling based on hierarchy. So it is a revenge story, because it also starts with a tragedy, and we get Darrow in a space where he infiltrates the gold in the society to try and overthrow the society. So that's kind of like, if I could shorten it for you guys. But the amount of political intrigue, the amount of battles, the amount of plot twists in this whole series is just mind-blowing to me. It is definitely, and I will keep saying this, one of my favorite series of all time, if not the favorite. Like at this point, I feel like I can't think of any other series that just goes beyond Red Rising. It is number one. It is number one. It has taken over everything, and I've been so happy, like just reading these books and going through them, and I've been having a great time. So Iron Gold is book 4 in the Red Rising series. I get 4.5-star rating, but I'm pretty sure whenever I get to reread it again, which I know it's gonna happen, it will probably get a higher star rating. But yes, I enjoyed it. I tabbed it a bunch because also the writing in here, it's so good. Like, it's so good, and there's so many good lines that I just wanted to just save. Oh man, there's just things I just highlighted. I'm just seeing them now. I'm just seeing them, and I can't even read them because they're kind of like spoilery. I did enjoy this. I tabbed everything that I either loved or I felt like was very important to the story for me to find quickly later. But yes. And then I've got the Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadband, which is the first book in the Nightborn duet, and also the first book in the Crowns of Night Axia, which I've seen now. She's gonna give us duets and duets and duets and some novellas in between, and I'm very happy about it. This is a vampire story. Let me just start there, and that's the thing that just intrigues me the most. We are just here with the vampires. It's not just one vampire, two vampires. It is mostly vampires that we follow in here, but the story is mainly following our main character, who was found as a toddler essentially by this vampire king, took her under his wing, raised her, trained her, and she was known as the human daughter of the vampire king, and he taught her everything that he knows. And people didn't understand this relationship because it's like, how can you raise a human? They are essentially our food and you are raising one in your castle. But he taught her how to defend herself, how to fight, how to be careful around other vampires, and so that one day she could grow up and enter this very bloody and deadly competition against other vampires, which I was just like, how are you gonna do that? But she enters in this competition, and while she's there, she meets another character, because this is also a romantasy. She meets a character, and the way in which their story kind of like weaves together was so good. The competition element of this I really enjoyed as well, which was like another selling point for me. The romance in here is a little bit slow burn, but very angsty as well, which I really enjoyed. But the plot twist at the end, I was just not ready for it. I did not expect it. I thought other things were gonna happen, but they didn't. Which made me jump straight into book 2, because I was just like, I need to know. But yeah, I really love these books. I love these covers. They're very stunning. I love that they match, and I love that the new duet that started coming out also matches this. So at some point I will just have Carissa Broadband sitting like this on my shelf, and I'm just like, I'm really happy about that. And then I reread Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi, which is the second book in the Legends of Orisha series, which is a YA fantasy. And I reread this in preparation for book 3, which was a real disappointment. But this one was a reread, like I mentioned. I really enjoyed it. I like the whole Orisha element of it, like gods and connecting to your gods and regaining your magic, because the whole story was about a main character who was called a magi, and magi are people who would come into their power at the age of 13, but some time ago the king of this land went and took away magic and executed whoever could use magic at the time. So all the kids growing up from then did not have access to their magic, but they were also treated very badly. And so essentially our main character wants to stop all of this from happening, and the one way she figures how to do this is to try and bring magic back. So the whole adventure of the story is having this character be on this journey to bring magic back and to stop this tyranny from this king that has been ruling for so many years, and try to bring freedom to the magi. But yeah, it's a great ride. Like I always say, this is going to be a series that is always memorable to me, because it is the series that introduced me to fantasy as a whole. So I will always have a special place for it in my heart. But I really enjoyed this one. I really enjoyed the reread, and this time around I got the opportunity to listen to the audiobook, because when I did read it the first time I did not know anything about audiobooks, so I did not have access to an audiobook. But I loved the narration, I loved the language, because there is some Nigerian language. I don't want to say which one because I don't want to get wrong, but there is Nigerian terms used in the book, and me as I read it, I know I'm reading it wrong, but it was nice to hear it from somebody who speaks the tongue and pronouncing everything correctly. So I really enjoyed that. And then I read A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. I really like Ashley Poston, you guys. She writes romances that almost like magical realism slash paranormal romances, because there's always some magical element that makes things impossible in her stories. But I always like the way she weaves everything together, and I think I like her romances specifically because she writes a lot of chemistry between her characters. So with this one, we're following a main character who just had a bad breakup, and the one trip that she's been looking forward to the whole year, which is a book club get together with her best friend and like a few other people that they met through book clubbing. The plans kind of fall off because everybody's busy, but she decides, you know what, I'm still gonna make this trip on my own. And she does, but she ends up getting lost and ends up in this fictional town. And it just so happens that this fictional town is the exact town from her favorite romance series, and she gets to interact with essentially the characters from her favorite books. And I really like that element of it. It is a Grumpy Sunshine romance, so I think I do like Grumpy Sunshine, but I guess it depends to what level everything is taken. But yeah, I really did enjoy it. Sorry, my washing machine is going off in the background. I will pause and I will come back to finish when it finishes. The next book I gave 4.5 star rating is The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin. This is the third and last book in the Broken Earth trilogy, and this is a sci-fi. I will speak more about the synopsis when I get to the 5th season, because it is going to be featured in this video. But this was the conclusion to the story, and I give it 4.5 stars because, again, as N.K. Jemisin does, I feel like there's a lot of detail that she writes in her books, and I have to go back. It is the kind of book that you have to reread in order to properly understand everything, unless you're that kind of person who can retain all the information and all the details when you're reading a book, because she gives you a lot. And I always say that the magic system in this book is a little bit more complex and there's a lot of moving parts, but I really did enjoy it. And there's a lot of plot twists in here that just left me shook, and there's a lot of things as well that were explained that you did not fully understand from book one, but as you keep going with the series, things unfold even more and things make more and more sense. But I absolutely love this series. I love this series. It is one that I would also recommend for people to read, but I feel like you need to be either a seasoned fantasy reader or used to sci-fi, because it is a bit of an intimidating one, because of the very intricate magic system and the way that the series is written could be a little bit daunting. So I would not recommend it to somebody who's starting out. I think it's going to feel like a heavy one. But like I said, if you're seasoned, I feel like you could get into this series and really enjoy it. Another one that I enjoyed was a romance, which was very surprising, and it is called Only for the Week. And the other thing that's surprising is because, one, I don't really like contemporary romances. I struggle with it because I struggle with the insta love elements of it. I struggle with the third act breakup. It's just so annoying, so unnecessary. I struggle with like miscommunication. I'm just like annoyed every time something like that comes up. So I hardly want to pick up romances. But I think it was Umpile who probably recommended this one to me. And it's essentially these two people who meet during a vacation. I think they're celebrating either a friend's marriage or anniversary, but I think it was a wedding. And there is a bit of history there in the sense of, I think one of them dated, the female dated the guy's friend, but it didn't work out. And it seemed like the guy always had like the hots for the girl, and they never did anything because there was a friendship there, but they didn't know each other that well. And they get into this space where they decide to be with each other only for the week, where they are at this holiday destination. I'm like, no strings attached, and it's not something that I would really usually enjoy, but I think because it was a decision made by both of them, they both agreed to this, I could be on board with it 100%. But like, the angst of it, the sexual tension, it's also good. I loved each of the characters. I loved how the characters were written, and it's just black on black romance, which is like my favorite thing in romances. And I loved how there was no like portraying of traumas or anything like that. Like, our characters were like 30-year-olds, they're successful, they run businesses, they're like professionals, they've got their ish together. You don't have broken people here. And it's just like, I've got these two very amazing people. They want to be together. There's nothing that's holding them back. So this is what's going to happen. But yeah, I had a very fun time listening to this one. I did read this on audio. I don't own the physical copy, but it's definitely worth the listen. And then I listened to Every Lost Secret by A.R. Torrey. I've gone to liking A.R. Torrey's books. She writes ecological thrillers, and I think this is like the second or third book that I've read from them, but I really enjoyed this one. It is a rich people drama-filled thriller with plot twists galore. And it's just so good. It starts off with one of our characters in police custody, basically being accused of attempted murder. And then you go back into the story to see how everything unfolds, because you've got this character who moves in next door to one of the richest people there, and the woman one of the richest women there is Kat. So you've got this neighbor who moves in, but she also happens to be the new employee of her husband. And you already get the sense that this girl is just not here for the right reason. There's something going on here. And the way that Kat goes and handles her, oh, it's just so good. It's so good to listen to. Definitely a must listen. Like I say, I enjoy A.R. Torrey, and ever since reading this book, I've now added every book I could find by A.R. Torrey on my Everend to listen to, because I'm just like, whenever I need a good thriller, a nice time, I know that she will deliver. All right, now let's get into my 4.75 star ratings. These are the books that almost made it. They just almost made it, but there was just something was just missing. The first one is First Lie Wins, and this one is by Ashley Elston. It is a mystery thriller, and the thing that intrigued me was like on the first or second page, where our main character is in this space where she's having a dinner date or a dinner party a dinner party her and her new boyfriend are hosting, and she's getting to meet the friends for the first time, and it's very awkward, and she's trying to kind of like impress the friends, but they come kind of like from well-off families and she doesn't come from nothing, so they are worried that she's there for the money and she has to kind of like prove that she's not. But then she goes and says that, you know, having this dinner party, the first lie is the most important one, and if the people believe the first lie, you're good to go. And I was just like, something is about to go wrong. Is about to go wrong. And I can't talk much about this because it is a thriller and I don't want to like spoil anything for anybody, but it was such another nice one to like listen to on my commute. I really enjoyed it. I had a fun time, and I was just like the whole time just waiting for the next thing to happen, because I couldn't believe the lengths that these people would go to get whatever needed to be done I can't say much, but it was so good. Read it, pick it up, try it. And then I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the multimedia elements of it. I also don't own this. It was a library copy when I picked it up, and I did partner this up with the audiobook, which I would recommend because it's really good. As much as the physical book itself has multimedia where we've got emails, letters, SMSs, text, whatever it is, the audiobook brings all of that to life, and I really enjoy it. You follow this young girl who is in school and doing this extra credit thing where she decides that she's going to investigate the alleged murder of a girl who was 16 at the time, and she thinks that the guy who was accused of it is not really at fault, but unfortunately he also died. So we go through this journey with her as she's trying to uncover the truth of what happened. And I must say, I didn't really see the plot twist coming until it was like right there in front of me. Maybe I'm not good at guessing these things, but I was not expecting the culprit to be who the culprit was, but I enjoyed the journey of it. And as she's processing and going through all of these different steps, you are processing with her, so you are not at any point ahead of her seeing what she doesn't see yet. So we are literally investigating this whole thing with her, so it didn't leave me much time to sit and ponder as to what was happening. I just wanted to keep reading and keep going. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I have to yet pick up the second book. I do have the second book somewhere on my shelf, but I didn't own the first one, so I'm happy that I read it, and I will probably continue with the series sometime this year. And then a romantic series that Vuvu put me on last year, that had me by the chokeholds. They had me by the chokehold last year, and it was by Stacia Stark, and it is the Kingdom of Lies series. So I gave book 3 and book 4 4.75 stars each, and I will talk more about it as well when I get to the first book, because I think that falls part of my 5-star reads. But it is such a good romantasy. It features fairies, it features kind of like an adventure. There's a very steamy, angsty romance. There is magical abilities that have been kind of like locked away, so there's this journey of like unlocking magic, and in a place where also magic is seen as a bad thing for a specific period in these people's lives. It's only from a certain point in your life where it becomes acceptable for people to use magic. So there's a lot of elements like that, and we've got a monarch situation as well. So there's a lot of like moving parts. There's political intrigues in here. There's a lot of traveling that we get to see, so you get to travel to different lands as well as you continue with the story. But it is so good, and it's so addictive. I was literally addicted to the series when I read it. I didn't want to read anything else. Every time I picked up something, all I was just thinking about is the Kingdom of Lies and trying to figure out what else is Stacia Stark gonna do, because also at the end of each book there was a cliffhanger, and I was just like, sis, you don't want me to rest. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I did give book 3 and book 4 4.75 stars, like I mentioned. And then the last book I gave 4.75 stars was The Obelisk Gate, which is the second book in the Book on Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, which I've already spoken about, so I'm not gonna repeat myself on this one. All right, let's get into my 5-star rated books for 2025. The reason why you're here probably, but I had to mention the other two star ratings, because if I was on Goodreads, technically I would have given them 5 stars, but because Storygraph allows me to do 0.25s, I'm able to do this. But yeah, all right, so let's get into my 5-star rated books. So I want to start with the ones where I'm not going to talk about really, because I've already spoken about them. So we've got Golden Sun by Pierce Brown, which is the second book in the Red Rising series. This is one of my favorite books in the series. It got a 5-star the first time I read it. It got a 5-star second time I read it, and third time. But it's one of my favorite. It's when things really pop off. Like, things popped off in book 1, but here, like, the political intrigue of it and the battles of it is just so amazing. And the plot twist at the end of this one, I was just like, I was blown away. So yes, this one stays being one of my favorites. And then we also have the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin, which I've already spoken about as well. Also read this one twice already. I will be rereading this sometime in the future again, because I really do love this series, and I'm kind of upset that my book is kind of like it's peeling a little bit, but it's okay. It is a loved book regardless. So the next book I want to get into is Dark Age by Pierce Brown. I read this for the first time last year. I was stressed out. I was stressed out the whole freaking time reading this book, because from the prologue, you guys, from the prologue, like, Pierce Brown just blew my mind. I was just like, what the heck? We just arrived. I just arrived. And what's going on in here? So it kicks off literally immediately from where we left off in Iron Gold. So there's just no beating around the bush. We did that here. Okay, we planned everything here. Here we are executing. That's what Pierce Brown was saying. We had literally like 3 different factions fighting for the space at the top. This is what was going on. But this is one of those books where Pierce Brown kills so many people, and I was just stressed out whenever there was a battle, because I'm like, who's gonna fall today? Because this man, it's like he wants to just take a shovel and just take everybody away, and who are we gonna be left with in book 5? What is this? This is book 5 in book 6. Which I've been afraid to start. I don't have the physical copy, but I've been afraid to start book 6 because I was just like, I don't know. I'm literally nervous to open this book, but this was so good. It gave me such a great experience, a great time reading it, and I can't stop just recommending this series to literally, this is the one where everybody can read, whether you are into sci-fi or not, whether you like just want to introduce yourself to it. This is one of the best ones, I think, to start with. Book 1 really eases you into the whole sci-fi element, and I think the way Pierce Brown did it, it's so good, because he kept introducing the sci-fi elements like in small bite-sized pieces, so it didn't feel overwhelming and having too many things to understand. You already have to understand the world, so it's just, it's so good. And then I reread A Spy Family Volume 2. I really love this manga. It is my favorite by far. It is very funny, it is very wholesome. So in this one, we follow a main character who is a spy, and he gets a mission to essentially get close to this man who is very high top level from the opposing party, if we could call it that. Very high level, but the only time that this man has been known to show up publicly is during school events for his kids, and his kids go to this very prestigious school where the entry level into the school is so hectic. It is so hectic, they don't just let anybody in. So in order for him to complete his mission, he has to get close to him. The only way to get close to him is to be essentially in a position where he could be invited maybe to one of these events. I haven't even gotten to that part, okay? There's a lot of volumes. But one thing that he needs to get access to the school is to have a child, but he doesn't have a child. So he goes to an orphanage to go pick a child essentially, and the child he picks happens to be the one with telepathic abilities, but he doesn't know that, and she's not telling anybody because she really wants to be part of a family. So she's behaving herself and doing all she can to basically fit in, but she can read his mind, and she's very confused about some of the things that he thinks about. And also for the mere fact that she is into spy movies, it just fascinates her every time she hears this, her dad, quote unquote, because a foster parent at this point, is going through. So you see things through her lens, and it's just so hilarious. I love the TV series as well. I rewatched it on Netflix because I watched it somewhere else before, but I absolutely loved it, and I'm literally trying to catch up on the actual books, but I only own 2 volumes so far. I am still collecting this one. They are not the cheapest, so whenever I see a sale, I will buy and keep to my collection. But I also do have access to them on my Libby, so I do have volume 3 currently on my Libby, which I need to read before it expires again. But I really love Spy Family. It's definitely one of my favorites, and I would recommend it to anybody who likes manga or maybe wants to try out manga, maybe it's new to manga. This is a very nice one. I love the facial expressions, and I feel like they did a very on point translation from the book to the TV series as well. Absolutely love it. It's a great time. You will laugh your heart out. And then I've got Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I got a recommendation from Raymond to read the book, and then I realized that there's a TV series. So me and my husband went and watched the TV series first, got obsessed with it, absolutely loved it. The kind of series that we binge watched in 2 days, similar to Silo. That's what we're doing with Silo right now. We're watching Silo on Apple TV. But I really enjoyed it, and so much so that I was like, I have to get the book, I have to read the book. And I read the book, and it was exactly as I saw it on the TV series, following our main character Jason, who after one night of going out to celebrate his friend's achievement in winning this prestigious award for his invention, which the friend actually says like Jason should have won it because he is a scientist, but because of certain choices that he made throughout his life to choose family over his career, he is a university lecturer instead of a practicing scientist, if I can call it that. So he goes and celebrates with his friend. He's like, you know what, it's not a big deal, I'm still happy for you. But then on his way back home, he gets abducted by himself from another universe. Yes, he gets abducted by another Jason from another universe. So let's call this Jason 2. So Jason 2, at this very critical point in his life, same as Jason 1, he made the opposite decision and chose career over family. So in his universe, he's a billionaire. He's the CEO of his company who produces this thing that I cannot really mention right now. But because of his decision, he feels lonely because he's got everything that he's ever wanted in terms of his achievements, his awards. He got all the awards, but he still feels empty, and he regrets making that decision. But because he's lived in the riches and he knows what it is, he decides to essentially steal Jason 1's life and take over as the husband and the father, because Jason 1 is a husband and a father. So we're following this journey where Jason 2 abducts Jason 1, puts him in his universe and leaves him there, and then he goes and lives Jason 1's life. But Jason 1 won't leave this resting, so he's on a journey to essentially go back home. But as he's trying to do that, he's figuring out that it's more difficult than initially anticipated, and the twists that come out of it just blew my mind. I was not ready for it. Obviously, I did watch the TV series before I read the book, so I knew of that plot twist coming along, but I liked how it was literally a match, a one-to-one between book and TV series. I enjoyed every part of it. Ever since, I have rewatched Wayward Pines, which is also based on the Wayward series by Blake Crouch, because I wanted to read that series as well. Like, it has gotten Blake Crouch onto my radar as that kind of author that I would probably be listed as one of my favorites. So this is what we've got. I loved it. It is a great one. It's another one that is very, not very easy, but it's easy enough to follow. It's very quick, very fast paced. It's a short one. It's a standalone. I mean, it's all the things. I really, really loved it, and probably will be a book that I maybe reread one day, but it's still very fresh in my mind, and I'm not yet ready to reread it. So, but yes, you guys should read it for sure. And then two books that I don't own physically. The first one is Children of Blood and Bone, which is book 1 in the Legends of Orisha, which I've already spoken about. I reread this last year as well, anticipating the release of book 3. So this one will always have a special place in my heart. Like I said, it's the book that introduced me into fantasy, and it was a great way for me to start, so I really did enjoy it. I still kept my 5-star rating for it. And then I read volume 5 of Heartstopper, which I really enjoyed as well. I gave that one 5 stars. It is following 2 young boys as they start off as friends, and slowly their friendship develop into a romance, and each of them have something that they are either struggling with or working on. So one of the boys is figuring out that he's bisexual, and he is figuring out what that means for him. He's doing a lot of research, but he is living through the experience. And we have another kid who has been bullied for being gay, and he is working on his self-confidence, but there's also eating disorders mentioned in the books. There's mental health always like involved in all of Alice Oseman's books, and I really like the way that she handles it. This one I read it and I gave it 5 stars, and then after a while I'm like, is it 5 stars? I don't know, but I know that I love the whole series. I feel like the 5 stars was probably for Heartstopper in general, but I'm not gonna change it. I'm gonna leave it as is, because after reading it I did feel like, oh man, it's so sweet. It's so sweet. I just love it. And then I read This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan, which is a romance, and it's a second book in the Skyland series. I didn't even know it had a name, but in this one we are following Soledad. And Soledad, we know her from book 1 as being in this very toxic marriage with a husband that you could tell from book 1 does not appreciate her at all. So it is another one where it's grown people romance, which I love. I love grown people romance. I love grown people romance that tackle real life issues, and everything that Kennedy Ryan tackled in this book, I was like, I might not have experienced this specific thing, but I can relate, because I either know somebody who's been through that, or I myself has gone through that, or, you know, have been in a space where I know of somebody going through that, or I can foresee something like this happening, and how would I react to this? So I like it. Like, there's nothing fast paced about the romance. There's a lot of chemistry built up, and we get a good sense of like toxic versus healthy relationship and communication. And this one also includes mental health, and specifically focuses on autism, as one of our characters has twins who are both on the spectrum but at different levels. So that insight as well was something, I don't even want to, I feel like it's wrong to say it's something that was nice to see, but I have not read a book that featured autism in it, and for children as well, and how this character handled it, or had to handle it, and regard a sense of a healthy co-parenting situation. So there's a lot of things in the book that are triggering, but also there's a lot of things in the book that are real life-esque, and seeing how there are ways to navigate certain situations in a healthy way was very refreshing to see. And like I said, it's a grown people romance, and this also talks about like working on yourself, loving yourself, dating yourself, you know, putting yourself first, especially with women who have been in marriages for so long and have children. You easily put yourself at the back and take care of everybody else before you take care of yourself. And I saw myself go through that, and you see how that can affect you, your look, your energy, your emotion, your everything, and that could in turn also affect your family, you know, your relationships. So it shows the importance of working on yourself and bringing your best self to the relationship, and not really depending on the other person to be your source of joy. But I liked it. I really liked it. I had a great time with this one. I wasn't sure in the beginning if I wanted to continue with the series, because I was like, I read the book 1, I really enjoyed it, but I don't know if I want to continue. What else is there? But Kennedy Ryan brought it, and I had a great time. And then I read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, another one who's a favorite. In this one, we are following a character whose grandmother dies and leaves her this apartment that the grandmother owned, and the grandmother has always said that this apartment is magical, but she just thought that it's an old woman's tale. Her grandmother loved to travel, and in some years she used to travel with the grandmother, so they have a very deep bond. So the grandmother leaves her this apartment, and literally the first night she moves into this apartment, she goes to sleep, wakes up, and finds that there's a man sleeping on her couch. And she's just like, what the heck is going on? Who are you? And he's like, who are you? I'm like, what do you mean? I live here. It's like, no, but I'm living here. And she finds out that this man is actually somebody who exists 7 years in her past. So we realize that this, like, the grandmother was actually correct in saying that this apartment was magical, so it has the ability to transport the person living in the apartment either 7 years in the past or 7 years in the future. So she keeps going back 7 years in the past, and this is the only way that she can actually meet this guy. And it's so nice, it's so cozy, seeing how they connect. And the one day they tried to see if they can leave together, and then they couldn't. The one person literally disappeared because they did not belong in their timeline. So it was very interesting to see, and I wanted to see how she would wrap up this romance, because essentially it's a romance, so these people have to end up together, but you just don't know how they're gonna end up there. So I was just like, I don't know, Ashley, but I trust you. I trust your process, and I like how your brain works. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I did say that she writes really great chemistry. In my opinion, I like her kind of romance. I don't like people who just fall in love out of nowhere. Okay, there needs to be some background, something. And she always brings some weird element to it, which this time traveling in here, the first one I read from her was like a ghost story, and I was just like, I don't know how you're gonna do it, but she made a plan. And then of course I gave A Court This Cruel and Lovely 5 stars, which is book 1 in the Kingdom of Lies series by Stasia Stark. Already spoken about this one as well. Absolutely loved it. It is such a great series to listen to as well, because I don't own any of the books. I have not seen a single word of this book because I listened to the whole series on audio, and it's the kind of fantasy romance where the magic system is not so complex that you need to follow a glossary or anything like that. Like, everything is easily caught up, and I was just like going through it, going through the motions. And then the next 2 books I have are from the same series, and I reread these books in anticipation of the 3rd book that came out much earlier in 2024, which was not a disappointment, but it wasn't as good as these 2, okay? And I'm talking about Crescent City book 1 and book 2. We've got House of Earth and Blood and House of Sky and Shadow. Absolutely love this book. These books, not just these giant books that I tab, 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 tab. This one, like you can see that gap there for the bottom book where it's not tabbed as much. Let me focus. That is because I was consuming it on audio. That is the audio portion where I don't have the physical book. But yeah, probably when I go back to reread these one day, I will go back and fill in those missing tabs. But I love this series. It's one of my favorites from Sarah J Maas. Sarah J Maas is also like a favorite author to me, and I'm just constantly anticipating her next book in a series. In this one, we are following a main character called Bryce Quinlan, and Bryce gets tasked with solving a murder. And why she get tasked to solve this murder is because the same kind of murder happened a few years ago where her best friend got murdered with her pack. And because she's the one person who was kind of like an insider during this time, they task her to solve the murder as like the murder starts stringing up again, and they assign a bodyguard to her who is a fallen angel by the name of Hunt Athalar. And this is also a romantasy, but it is definitely a slow burn one, which I feel like they only get to kiss in this book. But it is so good, and there's so many other things happening that the romance is not the main focus in this book. It is mostly about the mysteries, solving this crime, and getting to know all these characters and all of these creatures, because she features like vampires, fae, hybrids, shapeshifters, wolves, like you name it, she's got it in this book. So you are concentrating so much on getting to know all of these characters, all of these dynamics, all of these plots, that the romance is kind of like there, but it's not the main focus. But oh my gosh, I really enjoyed it. And then when we got to this one and we got to the end of it, and I was just like screaming when we got to the last sentence, which is what made me anticipate book 3 so much, because I knew that there was gonna be like a cross situation happening. And oh my gosh, I have had a great time with the series. It's one that I will also keep rereading as she keeps releasing the book. So if this year or next year she decides to release book 7, would it be book 7 in ACOTAR, I'll have to reread ACOTAR. And then I'll have to see if I need to reread this. But I will definitely need to reread ACOTAR because I have not read it in like 2 years. But yeah, I love me some Sarah J Maas. The last book I want to share with you guys is Throne of the Fallen by Carrie Maniscalco. I'm realizing something. Most of these books are fantasy and sci-fi. But this is what I read also. And it's like 2 romances. And what other genres do I have? And manga. Graphic novel. But literally everything else is like fantasy sci-fi. But we've got Carrie Maniscalco's Throne of the Fallen, which is the first book in the Princess of Sin. I think it's called the Princess of Sin series, where in each book it seems like we are following one of the 7 princes of sin. And in book 1 we follow Prince Envy, who his kingdom has been cursed, and he is trying to break this curse by entering this competition where he's supposed to follow certain clues to lead him towards the end, and people get eliminated along the way, and elimination could mean death as well. And if you win, you essentially get a chance to request for anything, and there is something specific that he wants so that he can help his kingdom. But in doing so and entering this competition, it brings him to meet our love interest, who happens to be a painter, and he meets her because he wants her to commission a painting for him. But she refuses because she's just like, I don't paint hexed objects because bad things happen when I paint hexed objects. So you getting the sense that there is something magical about her as well. She is seeming very human, but the whole time you're just like, there's something about her, and you don't find out until the end of it. And I was just like, I was not ready for it. But I love this. This is giving kind of like Bridgerton-esque vibes, but featuring demons. Picturing demons, because you got the tone, you got the language, you've got the parties, like you've got that whole feeling of it, and the audiobook is just so good to listen to. So I just, man, I just had a great time with this one. Really enjoyed it. Gave it 5 stars. Obviously, I agree to what they say about Karen Maniscalco and her writing, and I just love that she's just adopted this Bridgerton-esque kind of writing for the series. I recently read book 2 as well, which follows the Prince of Gluttony. Absolutely enjoyed that as well. The banter in here is really good. It's very angsty. The romance element of it is also quite angsty, and the way that she builds the chemistry between the main characters and the whole banter is just so delicious. But yeah, a really nice one to read. Really enjoyed it. All right, that brings us to the end of this video. I didn't think it would be this long, honestly. But those are all the books that I loved in 2024. Those were my best books for 2024. Please let me know down below which books were your favorite for last year, and if you might be anticipating any 5-star reads for 2025. But yeah, if you made it this far in this video, leave me 5 stars. And like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and I will be definitely seeing you guys in my next video. Bye bye.